Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this virtual licensing committee subcommittee of the licensing committee. My name's Councillor John Andrews, and I'll ask my other two councillors to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everybody. I am Councillor Les Fry. I represent Dorchester West.
Hello, I'm Councillor Kathy Love, and I represent Ferndown North.
Thank you very much. The first item on the agenda is we have to elect a chairman. So I ask for nominations.
I would like to propose Councillor John Andrews.
And I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is apologies. We haven't got any apologies because we've got everybody here on all the councillors here. Can I ask everybody that's attending the meeting, apart from the subcommittee members, to switch off their cameras and their microphones, and we will come to you, everybody in turn. You will all have your opportunity to speak, and when you are speaking, then you can switch on your cameras and your microphones. Thank you very much. I'd just like now to go around to the council officers who are attending today's meeting. I'll start with the legal representative.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm Laura Autry and I'm a solicitor with Dorset Council.
Thank you very much, Laura. Can I now go to the report author, Catherine Miller?
Hi, I'm Catherine Miller. I'm licensing officer at Dorset Council.
Can I now ask Democratic Services Officer?
Good morning, I'm George Dare and I'm the clerk for this meeting.
Thank you very much, George. I would now, we got the licensing team leader as well.
Yes, Chair, just here to observe. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd now like to ask all the representatives of their parties in attendance to introduce themselves. Now I have a list here. So have we got Philip Day, the applicant solicitor?
You have indeed, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Adam Pyle, the applicant.
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Adam. I'm the applicant.
And you've got Nicholas Bell with you, yeah?
Yep. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Have we got police representation here? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any police representation? They in, George?
No, they're not here yet.
Gareth Gosling nor Kirsty Gatehouse, no? Jane Williams?
Good morning, councillors.
Morning, Jane. Thank you for attending. Now we come to the members of the public, the objectors. Mr. and Mrs. Corney. Hello. No. Mr. and Mrs. Corney not in. Mr. and Mrs. Terry.
Yes, we're here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
morning. Morning. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Mr. and Mrs. Yelling.
Yes, we're here.
Thank you very much. So the only ones we haven't got are the police and Mr. and Mrs. Corney, I do believe. Yeah. Right, so just going through some formalities now. So we have to keep to the agenda. And I'm on the wrong page on my sheet. So declarations of interest from any councillors?
No, nothing.
Thank you very much. Urgent items? I don't think we've got any urgent items today, have we, George?
No urgent items.
Thank you very much. So we'll move to the application for the new premises licence for Caffeine Weymouth. At this point, I'll ask the licensing officer who's presenting the case to present the case to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This hearing is to consider a new premises licence application for Caffeine, which is 44 the Esplanade, Weymouth. The application is for a cafe coffee bar on the first floor and a cocktail bar and bistro on the lower floor. It was submitted by Caffeine Weymouth Limited, and it's for a premises that was formerly known as Mary's Tea Rooms. This did have a licence, however, it was surrendered by the previous licence holder when they terminated their tenancy in October 2021. The applicant, Caffeine, applied for the same timings as per the previous licence holder. So that was regulated entertainment, which included films indoors, from Monday to Sunday, 8:30 a.m. till 04:30 a.m. Late night refreshment, which again indoors and outdoors, Monday to Sunday, 2300 to 04:30 hours. Supply of alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 08:30 to 4:30 hours. The previous licence holder did not make full use of this licence and was predominantly used as a tea room. I'd also like to point out to the committee that the DPS, which is named on the application, which is Mr. Parr, has not yet applied for his personal licence. So therefore, until he has done, he won't be able to serve alcohol straight away unless they find somebody else to pop on there. There were 2 representations received from responsible authorities, and this was from Environmental Health and Dorset Police. Their comments can be found at Appendix 2. And some mediation took place between the 2 responsible authorities, with the applicant accepting some additional conditions and timings made by Environmental Health, and these can be found at Appendix 3. You'll also see at Appendix 4 that the conditions and timings suggested by Dorset Police were remaining unresolved at the time of writing the report. However, the main issues in contention at that time were the last entry and the finish time and sale of alcohol to allow for drinking up time. However, since the writing of the report, further mediation was undertaken with now the applicant solicitor, Mr. Day, and members and those who have made representations have all received this information in an email that came through yesterday. To summarise, what's now been offered and agreed by the responsible authorities is Sunday to Wednesday and a terminal hour for all regulated entertainment, opening and late night refreshment of 23:59 with the last sale of alcohol at 23:30 hours. Thursday, Friday and Saturday, a terminal hour for all regulated entertainment, opening and late night refreshment of 01:30 hours with last sale of alcohol at 0100 hours. Easter Sunday and the Monday immediately following, terminal hour for all regulated entertainment, opening and late night refreshment at 01:30 hours with the last sale of alcohol at 0100 hours. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day and New Year's Eve, terminal hour for all regulated entertainment and late night refreshment at 01:30 hours with last sale of alcohol at 0100 hours. There will be no admission or readmission to the premises after midnight on any occasion, save for patrons permitted to temporary leave and then re-enter the premises, e.g. to smoke, and such patrons will not be permitted to take drinks or glass containers with them after midnight. As a result of these timings and conditions, Dorset Police and Environmental Health have now withdrawn their representations. There were 5 representations made against the application from interested parties, and their comments can be seen at Appendix 5. There was also 1 representation against the application from Weymouth Town Council. However, since the conditions that were sent out yesterday, they have now withdrawn their objection. There was one representation made in support of the application, which is at Appendix 7. Members will also need to consider that the premises falls within the cumulative impact zone contained within the Dorset Council licensing policy, which can be found at Appendix 8. And this states that premises situated within a designated cumulative impact area for new premises or variations that are likely to add to the existing cumulative impact will normally be refused if relevant representations are received. Examples of factors that the licensing authority may consider as demonstrating there will be no impact may include, but not limited, for example, small premises who intend to operate until midnight, premises which are not alcohol-led, instances where the applicant is relocating their business to a new premises but retaining the same style of business, conditions which ensure that premises will operate in a particular manner, such as a minimum number of covers or waiter waitress service to secure a food-led operation, premises which bring a variety of cultural activities to the area and expand the range of activities offered for customers. I'd also like to remind members that the options available to them for this is to either grant the licence subject to conditions as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and the mandatory conditions, to exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, refuse to specify a person in the licence as the designated premises supervisor, or to reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Appreciate that. Right, so I'll now ask for any questions of the licensing officer. Councillors?
Nothing at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, the applicant? Have you any questions for the licensing officer?
No questions for us.
No questions.
Thank you. Any responsible parties, but that would be Jane in this respect, I think. Oh, sorry.
No, thank you, Chair. No,
Right.
thank you.
And any persons who've made representations, would either of the people that are here today, Mr. and Mrs. Terry and Mr. and Mrs. Yelling, like to make any take any questions to Catherine Miller?
Yes, it's worth noting. Simon Terry here. It's worth noting that the last bit about the designated area was very interesting to myself, and it's not something that I had heard about before. So I would like to have a copy of that to be able to review and ask questions at my own time, because I think some of the points there were very salient about the application that's coming out, particularly the statement about selling of alcohol and entertainment outside the normal hours. But we can cover that in my objection, but it sounds very relevant to this application.
Mr. Terry, if you've got the report, it is on part of the report that was sent out as part of the application process. It is down the bottom. I can't remember where I was told it was to.
I don't think we got that, did we?
I'm not sure that we got that, did we?
I did send you out a report, Mr. Terry. It's Catherine, to view online.
Was that? Oh.
Okay, and we haven't had a chance to read that report. Apologies. So that's where we are. We think that from what was mentioned, it sounds very relevant, but we have not had the opportunity to read it. I don't know when when was that?
I don't know. Oh.
When was the email?
I don't know which email that came on. So some stuff came through yesterday.
Was that yesterday?
I can't remember when I sent it out to you. Let me have a quick look.
Okay. Please be aware that we have at the moment that we believe the freeholder and therefore the leasee are in default of our lease, and so we have started legal proceedings against the freeholder.
Yeah, the agenda was sent out yesterday.
Okay.
The link to it, rather.
Okay, so our solicitor has not had time to review that document, because we've contracted a solicitor and we would like the solicitor to review that document.
Okay.
But 1 day's notice is. I'm sorry, but we've been preparing our notes all night, so I didn't spot the link.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mr. Yelling, any questions for Catherine?
No, I think we feel that the compromise now is much better than the original application was. We still do have concerns around the noise it will create to people who are trying to sleep in the vicinity. Obviously, the weekends are later than the week, but it is definitely a step in the right direction to where we're at now. And as Mr. and Mrs. Terry said, we do have some concerns that this is against the terms of the lease that we actually have for that building, because, you know, there are apartments in the same building as this.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so if everybody's asked their questions, or haven't in some cases, I'll next ask the applicant to present their case. So over to you, Mr. Day, Mr. Paul, Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll do most of the talking, if I may. I'm very grateful to Ms. Miller for outlining the background to this in such great detail. The only documents that I propose to refer to are in the supplemental agenda, which contains a copy of the original licence, which Ms. Miller has already told you about, and I'm not going to repeat that. That licence was surrendered on the 11th of October of last year. As I'm sure you'll be aware, when a licence is surrendered, anybody who has an interest in the premises may apply within 28 days to transfer that licence. And if that application is made within that time period, then the old licence magically comes back to life transferred to the applicant. In this case, my clients came into the matter a couple of days too late, and were therefore unable to simply resurrect the old license. It's a technical thing, but there it is. And so the licensing consultant that they instructed then made an application for what was, to all intents and purposes, the same license as had previously been there. Because it was a new license application, then entirely properly, police, environmental health, all the other responsible authorities and people living in the vicinity, and come to that, anybody else, were perfectly entitled to make representations with regard to it. And as you will know, the police and environmental health in particular did so. The conditions that were initially agreed with both the police and environmental health, and not all of them were included within the original agenda papers. I came into this matter very late. It was only last week that I was first instructed with regard to it. And I have to confess that when I looked at all of the papers, I found it very confusing to try and work out precisely what had been agreed and what remained in dispute with the police. So I compiled a single document with all of the proposed conditions, timings from everybody in it, and highlighted those items that were still not agreed and everything that was agreed. And if I can simply with regard to the external area, and this is on page 14 of the supplemental agenda pack, there are two conditions there specifically relating to the outside area, and that is that the outside of the premises, including any outside seating area, will be regularly monitored by staff and CCTV to ensure that the licensing objectives are being upheld. And from 2200 hours, in other words, 10 p.m. daily, the outside area will be used only by those temporarily leaving the premises for the purposes of smoking. One of the things that was in dispute was with regard to a last admission or readmission to the premises. But having had further discussions with the police, I was able to agree with them an amended condition, which also appears on page 14, is the second one down, and the amendment I highlighted in bold italics so that everybody could see what it was, and that there shall be no admission or readmission to the premises after midnight on any occasion, save for patrons permitted to temporarily leave and then re-enter, for example, to smoke, and such patrons will not be permitted to take drinks or glass containers with them after midnight. I hear what's said about the terms of the lease. With the greatest respect, that is not something that you need or should concern yourself with. The questions that you have to ask are what steps are appropriate in this case to promote the licensing objectives. And of course, public nuisance is one of those. In terms of nuisance and crime and disorder, then it is very clear from the guidance that you have to have regard to both the national guidance published by the Secretary of State and also your own statement of licensing policy, that you take your lead on matters such as crime and disorder from the police and from your officers. And you may derive a great deal of comfort from the fact that all responsible authorities that made representations have now withdrawn them on the basis of the amended conditions and timings that have been agreed by all. You will also, and I say this not really for the benefit of members of the subcommittee because you'll be well aware of it, but for the benefit of those members of the public who have taken the time out to come along today, that under the Licensing Act 2003 as it now is, you as councillors may be asked at any time by any person to review the licence if it appears that one or more of the 4 licensing objectives, and in this particular case you may think that the relevant ones are the prevention of crime and disorder and preventing public nuisance. Just for the record, the other 2 are ensuring public safety and protecting children from harm. If you think that any of those are being undermined, then you can review the licence. And on a review of the licence, as I'm sure you're aware, there is a whole range of options that you can take. At one extreme, you do nothing. At the other extreme, you can revoke the licence. And in between that, you can change the hours, you can change the conditions, you can add additional conditions, you can direct that the designated premises supervisor be removed from the licence, and on it goes. This is not like planning permission where once granted it's there for forever. A licence granted under the Licensing Act, a premises licence, can be reviewed at any time. Just one comment with regard to the DPS. There is a small error on the application form in that the name of the DPS on the application form is stated to be Andrew James Pyle. He is in fact Adam James Pyle. He is here with his business partner Nicholas Bell this morning to answer any questions that you may have. The position is that both of them have obtained the relevant licensing qualification that you need to have before you apply for a personal license. They are waiting for their disclosure barring service certificates. In other words, their criminal record check. That always takes a bit of time to come through, but the second they have that, then an application will be made for a personal license. And as Ms Miller quite correctly told you, if you were to grant a license, then no alcohol could be sold under it until you have a personal license holder who has been nominated as the DPS and added on to the license. In terms of the practicalities of it, you've already been told what the plan is. I would add to that it is very much intended that this should be an upmarket establishment targeted very much at those who are over 25. And in terms of pricing and so on, it will certainly not be the cheapest establishment in Weymouth. The object of the exercise is to aim for the top end of the market. And in that regard, the plan is to open the cocktail bar bistro that is on the lower ground floor and has its own entrance effectively at the rear of the premises. The coffee lounge on the ground floor is the entrance there is from the esplanade itself. But they hope to open downstairs within a month or so, but upstairs will take a little longer, and it will be 2 months before that happens. I should mention, and I do so with some care, that there is a condition that has been put forward with regard to door supervisors, and in particular that it requires 2 door supervisors on Friday and Saturday nights in particular. That was agreed very much on the assumption that both ground floor and the lower level would be in operation from the outset. That's not actually going to be the case, and it is within your gift, if you think it appropriate, and I've no doubt that you would take advice on this, to say something along the lines of that until the ground floor is opening, that they need only have 1 door supervisor on the lower ground floor. Just to put matters in context, the low ground floor is all set out for seating and so on. We're talking about realistically 30, an absolute maximum of 40 covers. And it is felt to an extent that having two, sorry, excuse me, besuited ladies or gentlemen, bouncers on the door, would give something of the wrong impression in terms of the market. But I have to concede that that condition was proposed to have two in the original application, and that's what's been agreed with the police and environmental health. And therefore it is perhaps being a little cheeky to ask you to look at that again, but you are entitled to do so, as indeed you are entitled to do with any of the conditions that have been proposed and now agreed. I don't really think that there is a great deal more that than I can say about this. It is, from the applicant's point of view, a little unfortunate, well, rather more than a little unfortunate, that they didn't get onto this a week before they did, because it would have saved them a significant amount of money in fees, because they could have just paid £23 to the licensing authority, to your good selves, to transfer the license and have it all reinstated, and then we wouldn't be troubling you today. I mentioned that specifically again because it is relevant in terms of your cumulative impact policy. Yes, this is an application for a new license. However, if you compare the position today as with the position as it was on the 10th of October last year, there would be the same number of licenses in place. The hours that, if you accept the agreement that's been reached, would be far more restricted than the old license that was in place. And there are far more conditions that are now being proposed than there were before. And in that regard, you need only look at the supplemental agenda, which contains a copy of the original license, and you will see that, yes, there are a number of conditions attached to it. The relevant ones are, if you bear with me whilst I scroll down on my screen, on pages, sorry, apologies. It's great fun doing things remotely and online. The relevant pages are, and it's a bit difficult to see, but it's page 6 of the supplemental agenda. There are a grand total of 8 conditions there, which are nowhere near as comprehensive as what is now proposed. And in terms of cumulative impact, you may think that these circumstances are somewhat exceptional, to put it mildly, and that at the end of the day, granting a license as is now requested, subject to the amended hours and the amended conditions, will not, in fact, add to the cumulative impact of licensed premises in central Weymouth. I don't think that there is anything more I can usefully say without repeating myself, other than to thank you for listening so carefully. If you have any questions of me or of my clients, then we are here to answer them. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Day. Very comprehensive report there. Do either of the applicants themselves want to say anything, or are you fine with what Mr. Day said?
I don't know, and happy to leave you with what Mr. Day said there, unless any of the applicants have any questions sort of more relevant that we can provide better insight into.
Okay.
Yeah, it's comprehensive.
Thank you very much. So I'll go to councillors. Councillors, have you any questions for Mr. Day or the applicants?
Mr. Chair, yes, I have some questions, and I really don't mind who answers them, whether it's Mr. Day or the applicants there. Looking at the no admission or readmission to the premises after midnight on any occasion, say for patrons permitted to leave and then re-enter, e.g. to smoke. What opportunity would there be for people leaving for a smoke to mix with people that are not patrons of the premises? Is there any separation intended or planned?
It's inevitable that if somebody is outside, then somebody else walking along the esplanade might possibly stop and chat to them. But the conditions that are proposed require that that external area be supervised, and part and parcel of supervising it is making sure that those individuals who are outside don't congregate en masse or anything like that, and do not cause a disturbance to any local residents. The condition is on page 14 of the supplemental documents. I've read it once, I'll read it again. The outside of the premises, including any outside area, will be regularly monitored by staff and CCTV to ensure that the licensing objectives are being upheld. And of course, the primary one there is public nuisance.
That still doesn't answer my question, Mr. Day. I am concerned about people leaving the premises wanting to purchase or to sell items that may be illegal. And by the smoking, this clause would facilitate that for them.
I think so. Our plan for any outdoor seating would have a barrier around there with our door supervisor at the front of that, so there wouldn't be any opportunity for any kind of conflict with that. Anyone leaving the premises would be shown out of that seating area and out of that barrier, and then so it'd only be that people in the designated kind of smoking area that could possibly kind of come back in.
So I think you understand what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you be happy for that condition to be amended to make that front area if I call it a secure area, that people leave the front door of the premises, go into that secure outside seating area?
Yeah, I think for us, like in terms of what we're looking to bring as to the environment, like we definitely want that feeling of security as well for our patrons. So we're not looking for just a couple of tables outside. We're looking for a really nice area which lends itself well to the theme of the venue as well.
So do you think that people sleeping above your premises would be impacted and affected by smoke rising?
I don't think so. I think we can, we're happy to make sure.
I've just got to say yes.
Sorry, whoever that was, you will have your chance to come in and say that again. We're here to ask the questions. Whoever asks that will have the opportunity in a minute to ask their questions and make their points. Sorry, can you carry on, please?
I assume in terms of, the legal ability to smoke outside anyway, I can't see it being any more impactful from that in terms of if we need to specify where that smoking area in the outside area would be, we'd be happy to do that and work with, the local residents on that side of things.
I just want to make it also clear that at the moment, anybody can stand outside the front of your property or any other property and smoke as they wish, or if they choose to do so. Yeah. That is their choice, and that I'm just concerned about. I'm more concerned about people coming in and out and buying or selling a product.
Yeah, it definitely won't have that opportunity. We are looking for that barriered entrance, and then also in terms of, as a venue, we don't want to be encouraging people just to stand outside the front door and smoke either. We want there would be a designated area for that, which would probably be, away from that front of the buildings, leading up, so that any smoke rising up won't affect the people above us. Thank you.
So we understand that the license on this particular place lapsed on the 21st of October last year. When did you first express an interest?
So as myself, I'd actually followed the license online and I thought kept up to date with it. It was only when I saw a new, I think it was the 10th of November, I saw a new line had been added to the register that said surrender. I wasn't exactly sure of the terminology, so I went straight to licensing to ask, was surrender exactly what it said on the tin effectively, or did it mean something else? Was it just that person surrendering it? So as soon as I got confirmation of what that actually meant, I then had some discussions with the licensing team, who confirmed that license had been surrendered. There is usually a window to rescind that license, but that window had gone before we could act. Unfortunately, we were generally in close contact with the previous license holder, so we were quite surprised that we hadn't been notified. The gentleman who held the license was also quite regretful, as he felt that he had also not. He felt that he didn't know what he was doing was a permanent fixture. It was essentially a case of the license was due for renewal, he was due for payment, he didn't want to pay for it because he was leaving the premises. He wasn't aware that that was the case, and he's also made a contribution to help us rectify that matter as well.
Thank you. What's your backgrounds, both of you?
So myself, I run a couple of businesses in town. So we've got a couple of gyms, fitness centres. We run a pizza delivery business as well. So I've had to deal with food and hygiene and the general public on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, that's kind of my background. I've been doing that for about 10 years.
And Adam?
Myself, so I currently own a business within the recycling industry and automotive. Prior to entering that industry, I did work in hospitality.
So this is your first real venture into nightclub management and running a bar?
Yeah, it's definitely. We want to stipulate it's definitely not a nightclub. We're not looking to go into that area at all. We're looking to bring something that's a nice environment for people who want to go and enjoy that. It's definitely not a end of night venue that we're looking to bring to the area.
And what sort of training have you had to undertake? And I'm asking this particular question for other people who may be listening and observing this meeting. What sort of training have you both had to undergo? So we've both undertaken our premises supervisor course. So that's brought us some knowledge of the industry, how to uphold the licensing objectives. Something that we might not have been quite as aware of before, but definitely further education there. The conflict management course is something we're both enrolled in as well, as per the recommendation. Also, obviously, we are the owners of the premises, but we're not going to be the sole workers of it. We're looking to bring in experienced management to control the business and fill in the gaps in knowledge that we may have. We'll also be using consultants along the way to help us achieve the look and feel of the premises that we want. Thank you. And what's your understanding of the community impact zone in Weymouth? What do you know about that?
I'd say it was limited up until this point. It was flagged to us by the consultant that came to us, who then told us there was an impact zone. The police explained to us again that I think it was the lady from the police that sort of suggested that Weymouth was in a period of transition from how it had been previously in terms of late night venues, noise, and we unfortunately were someone that was, not unfortunately, we are a premises that is located in the impact zone, so there would be further conditions attached, and I understand why that is. And having grown up in Weymouth my whole life and been on many nights out there, I understand the concerns that are there, previous things that have happened, and why there's new condition types to promote that well-being and safety of others. So
you understand that we're here to try and draw a balance between people running a business and wanting to make a viable income, at the same time looking after the interests of all the residents in the area and people in Weymouth to enjoy it for all sorts of reasons. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, and we're here. We also are happy to take any advice on board. Anything we can do that's going to make you happy. We don't want a license that that feels wildly unfair to the residents in the area, that they're going to be coming to us quite soon after to raise objections or ask for our license to be reviewed quite shortly after because it doesn't meet those needs. We want there to be a balance that's struck. Also, I think that there's definitely a favourable outcome to those interested parties that have concerns, as because this license is a new application, there's been an opportunity to put some constraints on it, to control it. As Catherine said, from licensing, over the last sort of 20 years since that license was first granted, licensing and the council have learned how to manage these licenses better than so this new license promotes an opportunity to achieve that. Thank you. And what consultation has taken place with the residents above or around there? Have you taken that opportunity? We haven't personally, no. I don't believe all the residents are living in close proximity to us. David, our consultant, had obviously forwarded on the objections to us. Some we took on board 100%, others we thought weren't quite entirely as relevant. I think there's also been quite a gap in communication in general, with the fact that we've applied for a like-for-like license on the basis that what was granted we thought was fair to ask for back because it was already there. We weren't asking for more. If anything, we're happy we've come in to accept less.
I think a lot of the residents may not have been quite informed or only more recently informed of actually what we're looking to do and the actual license that we want. We're not looking to be a late night venue. That's why we're accepting the conditions that have been proposed. So I think that, so yeah, I'd just like to hope that now all the residents are aware of actually what we're trying to achieve, the hours that we're looking to operate, and then they're not reflected very well or well communicated in that first application as it was a like for like.
Do you think you would be receptive to holding regular meetings by whatever period with the residents to at least communicate directly, whether you agree or disagree with them, that's trying to have that open dialogue for the best interest of everybody who's living in that area?
Yeah, of course. Regular. So the stakeholders that are there, we want to be talking to. We do want to open a business, but at the same time, we are residents of the area. We're human too. So I can totally appreciate the needs of a person living above that venue are different to someone who's down the road, are different to myself who's a few miles away, are different to the business owners, are different to the staff, and also the people who want to enjoy that venue. So wholeheartedly, I can see all sides of the argument, and regular engagement and communication means that if you're happy to come and bring your issues to us and say, hey, last night was a bit louder than the week before, was something different, has something changed, or if the music downstairs was located in a certain way, or if we had someone just playing a bit of background guitar music, if that at one end of the venue that feels louder than the other, then tell us that and we can do something about it. And any changes that you can tell us, we can do something about.
But in principle, you'd be happy to open that dialogue with regular meetings as a way forward, so that you can sit down and share issues and concerns and work together as a community.
Yeah, we prefer that overarchingly, and we'd also appreciate that if unfortunately we weren't able to mitigate those issues and weren't in conclusion, that we'd be subject to a review or a complaint.
Perfect. Chair, thank you. That's my questions answered at the moment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foy, for those comprehensive set of questions. Councillor Ludd, did you want to ask anything? You were muted last time.
No, because Mr. Day has already answered one of the questions about the configuration of the building and the other ones for the residents.
Okay, thank you very much. I've just got a couple. Is the premises, I believe, to be bistro-led rather than alcohol-led?
Can I let my clients answer that one?
Yeah, certainly.
Pass on to Nick for that one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so definitely the majority of the hours are going to be down the route of a coffee house with some charcuterie board style food, tapas style kind of elements, especially at the front of the house. It's only towards the early evening where we will have that ability to, go down the licensed, options.
Right. Okay, and amplified music. So is it going to be live music, amplified music?
We're looking to work with local musicians, more a case on non-amplified in a way, like especially into our downstairs cocktail bar. We've got a piano in there. We're not looking to amplify that. We're looking at just to have a singing vocal voice and the piano. Same with acoustic guitar. We're not looking necessarily for any bands or anything in terms of upstairs. It's going to be more a case of a background style music, just a very nice environment to come and talk and spend some time with loved ones and friends.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, I had a question on the smoking area. Mr. Fry or Councillor Fry has asked that one, so my concerns around the outside area as well. Thank you very much. Right.
Chair, did you see that Mr. Day had his hand up?
Mr. Day's got his hand up, has he? Right.
Did he have a question?
If I may just clarify 2 points. With regard to the supervision of the external area, the conditions relating to security staff require that there should be at least one door supervisor available from 10 o'clock onwards on each floor when licensable activities are taking place on that floor. So that would mean that certainly with regard to the external area, after 10 o'clock at night, the condition requires that there is somebody there supervising it. And, the clue is in the name, door supervisor. Yes, of course, they do go inside to keep an eye on things occasionally, but the object of the exercise is that they are based on the door in order to supervise outside. The other very minor point that I would make is that the practice of your licensing officers, which I don't criticise in any way, is that when members of the public make representations, what is forwarded is a redacted copy. In other words, the contact details, the name of the person, the address, their email isn't included, which means that it is very difficult to engage directly with them, although certainly when I became involved, I did ask that the information that I provided, particularly with regard to the agreed conditions, be forwarded to everybody as soon as possible, and I believe that that did happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I see Mr. Yellen's hand up. I won't ask him to come in yet because I will ask him to come in and ask questions in a minute. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, Chair, a question for Mr. Day. Mr. Day, I very much appreciate the role of door supervisors, but actually what I and I think my colleagues are all here about is mitigating completely to reduce the impact of what the door staff have to do so they can do their job. What we don't want them is policing the area when you can actually, by design and management, deal with an issue from the start.
Yeah,
that's why I'm aiming from that, because I do appreciate door staff will be there, as you say, to supervise.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed, the way in which the operation has been described to you, I would hope will give you some reassurance that this is not a venue that is likely to attract people who are out to sink 10 pints and whiskey chasers in the night and cause trouble and mayhem. This is intended to be much more upmarket and away from that.
Thank you.
Right, now I will come to everybody in order. So those of you who are putting your hands up, you will get an opportunity to ask questions, but I have an order to do that in. So licensing team or team leader or licensing officer, have you got any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So authorities, so I think we've got Jane Williams here. Jane, have you got any questions for the applicant?
I have no no questions for the applicant at this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jane. So now I'll come to Mr. and Mrs. Terry first. Have you got any questions for the applicant?
I think it's more to do with coming back to the solicitor. We didn't bring our solicitor because we didn't think it would be a that type of discussion. But it's just to say that actually I believe the applicant is related to our freeholder. Adam is related to the freeholder of all the flats, and that actually when we phoned up the freeholder and said we hear this is going on, we found out about it through the paper. And the local paper where somebody said to us, have you seen this? And we went, oh, that's 3 feet below our flat. Yeah, so actually the communication and discussion that's been happening with us has been non-existent. And had that happened, I think potentially we could have come to some better agreement about what this is. Effectively, as a coffee house, I don't see why it needs a late license. And we can go into that as part of our objections. I'm happy, I understand this is the question. But I don't see why that discussion hasn't taken place with the residents. I think the statements that have been offered as to why it hasn't happened are a bit nondescript, as contact with us is easy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terry. Can the applicant explain anything around that?
All that I can say is that we didn't know until we arrived today who any of the people who had actually made representations actually were. You know, that's the way the world goes round. Some local authorities have a different view and make public and publish any representation in full. Practices vary, but I mean, we can't second guess who the individuals are. And even now, we don't know where they live. Can
I just stop there, Mr. Dake? Catherine, I just wonder, we don't publish people's details, so it is difficult. There's a reason for that.
It's a very fine balance, and we have had this question before, but we do keep it. We do blank the names out. However, we did offer, and I did offer, I think it was to Mr. Ramsey at the time, that the details and names and addresses of the objectors would be made available if he so wished. He never came back to me on it, so that is why. But we don't normally do it in the beginning because of the data protection side of things.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, Mr. Terry?
Yeah, I think it's really just to say that I honestly think that if this was going to be done, that a meeting with the local residents would have helped, and therefore we could have cleared a lot of these issues out to start with. And that I think my feeling is that I haven't got a problem with this being a coffee house. It's the music and the extended hours that are the problem, and the pavement, and basically we have a bedroom that is 3 feet away from where, and as was kindly pointed out by your councillor, people will be smoking and chatting after hours, and that's a bedroom for us, and therefore we'll get second-hand smoke, we'll get noise from that venue, and that's not something that we were expecting outside of normal hours, is what I've got to say.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you've got no further questions, we'll move on to Mr. and Mrs. Yelling.
I have got my objections, but I assume that's my presentation later. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Yelling, over to you.
So, during the course of the conversations we've had this morning, I'm a bit confused. Have we now got 2 smoking areas with 2 different exits, or is there 1 smoking area?
Could we answer that, Mr. Day, or the applicants?
Hi there, I can answer that for you. So there are 2 separate entrances to the premises, as always were. Obviously, patrons coming to either way will be coming to either of those entrances. So essentially, yes, there would be.
So where's sorry, I'm a bit confused, Adam. Where's the second entrance?
So the rear entrance to the ground floor is at the back of the esplanade, if you like, and you know, it's there's signage outside. There's a Dutch canopy over the back door that's always been there.
Can I explain it to him, because I know the area. So where it is, it'll be next to what is our bin store. It's the back entrance, and from my personal view, I don't have a problem if they want to put the entrance and exit out the back, because that will make our access and our noise problems a lot less.
Well, not for them.
But yeah.
Right. So it's next to the bin store, what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I know that because I go down there quite frequently.
Mr. Yelling, anything else?
No, I think I just reinforced what Simon and Louise said, is that, you know, a coffee house we would have been content with. I think actually if we had had some conversations about this earlier in the day, we'd all been in a bit of a better position. But yeah, it's the late night music, particularly, that's of an issue to me.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? No, there's no other questions to ask of the applicant, so thank you very much for that. The responsible authorities, Jane, do you want to present anything?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not here to present anything today. I'm here to answer any additional questions the councillors or any other representative might have around the licensing objective related to public nuisance in relation to noise, etc., to assist the committee if required.
Okay, thank you very much. And as you're here, councillors, have you any questions for environmental? Councillor Fry.
Jane, thank you for the work that you've done on this. Just to confirm that you're happy with the presentation, with the proposals in front of us here, and you'll think they'll meet the objectives of the licence objectives.
Indeed, these are very similar licence conditions that have been placed on numerous sites in recent months and years, and we have found them to be very good way of controlling and meeting the nuisance objective.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts on the smoking situation? That you've heard the discussion about smoking, and I do get that we have got a dilemma to reach here, a middle ground sometimes, because people can stand outside of premises on the public highway and smoke if they choose to do so, and smoke can waft up. And there's also the area at the front and rear. Any thoughts on that, of how that could be mitigated?
Well, if I can just deal with the noise issue, that would be the door supervisor's role, and noise in the street is governed by the police, not by environmental health. As for the secondary smoke issue, dispersion should be not an issue. Secondary smoke is not just about smelling smoke; it's about the inhalation of intensity of smoke. So I don't think this. I think there's more of a red herring as far as the smoking area being outside. It's an outside smoking area, which is put into effect from the regulations. And forgive me, I can't remember the name of the regulations. The whole idea is to take out smoke from premises where it can be intensified, and people can breathe in that intensification of particulate matter.
So you're saying that you don't think there's something we need to be too concerned about?
I don't think you need to be too concerned. It's more about controlling the egress and ingress of clients from the premises, so that they do not bring in additional members beyond the hours as the police has requested.
Thank you, Jane. Really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Has anybody else got any questions for environmental health? I see you've got. So I'll ask the applicants. Have you got any questions?
Yeah, very quickly. I think it's fair to say, and perhaps you'd be kind enough to confirm, that as set out in the summary of the agreement, that environmental health were originally content with rather longer hours than we're now talking about. In other words, until 2 o'clock on Thursdays, Saturdays, bank holidays, Sundays, etc. And of course, following discussions with the police, what's been put before the committee is now rather earlier than 2 o'clock.
That is correct, Mr. Day. I don't concede that is not that is what it was. We were originally, as you will be aware of, looking at the 4:30, and it was deemed appropriate to take it back to my proposal. The police have furthered that proposal, and the clients have agreed. The police and myself and the licensing officer had a meeting with your clients. It was a very productive meeting, and I just want to express at this time that their assistance in drawing together that conversation was very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. And so that's question. Right. So we've got Louise and Mr. and Mrs. Terry. Sorry.
No, that's all right. We can cope with first names. So my question for environmental health is essentially does the higher environmental health assessment take account of the fact that there is a bedroom above the premises and that people will loiter outside that premises and will talk and will discuss, and that will wake what essentially is my son's bedroom when he's staying there?
Did you get that, Jane?
So
I know it's a little bit
that was someone staying in your premises, wasn't a permanent resident.
Yes.
The condition that was put forward and agreed includes a acoustic impact noise management plan. It should include the nearest residential premises, and if that means that the nearest residential premises is above the site of the licensed premises, then that should be included in the report. So now, as long as that condition is agreed with the councillors, it is for the acoustic consultant or whoever the applicants have decided to bring in to provide that noise management plan, to bring that to our attention. We then agree with the licensing colleagues, agree the content of that noise management plan. What I can say to Mr. and Mrs. Terry is that the licensing regime is not the only regime that is followed as far as noise is concerned. We have what's called statutory nuisance, and that is where if you were to put in a complaint of noise, that is where officers of the authority would start as a statutory nuisance. And we would be assessing whether the volume, frequency, duration and severity enough to materially affect the way in which someone lives in their own home meets the statutory nuisance criteria.
Shouldn't we get that right at the point of the licence is
agreed? I'm sorry to say it's a reactive piece of legislation. And this is why we like having these licensing discussions and in putting this proactive conditions in place. But there's a proactive and a reactive response.
Okay, it's just I would have thought that you could do some noise measurements now to measure what noise impact would be in our flat, and that could be reported to this as part of the licensing agreement.
It's not the way this operates, I'm afraid, Mr. Terry.
Okay. Okay. I'm not particularly happy with the answer, but you wouldn't expect me to be.
No,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Chair, I think you're on mute.
Mute.
Schoolboy error, sorry. Mr. Yelling, have you got anything you would like to ask Environment?
No, again, as Mr. Terry said, I think it is the noise and that is the concern, and you know, noise travels and vibrates through buildings, particularly the type of noise, and I understand the assurance that we'll be giving that this isn't going to be a nightclub and it isn't going to have booming music, but certainly that's the sort of thing that we need to be aware of before we set up a premises that does rock the building, so to speak.
Okay. Okay, so that was a comment. So thank you very much, everybody, for your questions to the environmental health people. And thank you very much, Jane, for answering those questions.
No problem, Chair.
I don't think we have any representations from the police here because they've withdrawn their objections exactly to the application with the terms that's been agreed. So we'll go on to the people that have put in representations. So the objections. So first of all, I'll come to Mr. Yelling, then I'll come to Mr. Terry, and then we'll go in reverse order all the way up through so that people can sum up. So over to Mr. Yelling first, please.
Okay, I think I've made most of my points as we've been through the meeting, really. I think, you know, we just need, as people who live within that block or have premises within that block, we need reassurance that the quality of life of people trying to sleep in that building will be maintained and they won't be kept awake till 1:30 on a Saturday night with lots of noise and booming music coming from the establishment in the basement.
Thank you, Mr. Yelling. Any questions for Mr. Yelling from two councillors? Yes, Councillor Fry, and then Councillor Lowe.
Mr. Yelling, thank you. How long have you lived in the area, lived in that building?
3 years. We've had premises in that building 3 years since that building was redeveloped.
So you've been there for 3 years. So you know that you are living in an area relative of Weymouth, which is a nightlife area.
Was aware of that, yes.
So you moved in and know
it. And I appreciate what has happened in that area. Actually, has improved it quite a lot over the time that we've been there. And obviously, not only our block, but other blocks have turned into residential area and into residential units. And that trend has been welcome. And I appreciate there was a license in place till 4:30 in the morning originally, but that license was never used that way, and no noise came from the premises of Mary's in any way whatsoever. And it's just concerned that this is a backward step.
Well, what we're trying to draw is the balance between people living in Weymouth town centre and the businesses making a living and supporting the nighttime economy. And that's the difficult decisions. And I just wanted to confirm, which you have done for me, that you moved in there knowing that you were moving into a nightclub area when you moved in there with a premises below you that had a license to 4:30. So
I did not know the premises below me had a license to 4:30. I absolutely did not.
Sorry, can I just make a point that
We will come to you very shortly there, Mr. Terry. We will come to you very shortly. Thank you, Mr. Yelling. I think that's all my questions at the moment. But you, by the way, you will be happy to have an open dialogue with the owners of the building or the management.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lugg.
It's fine. Mr. Yelling actually answered my question whilst he was speaking. So
Right, lovely. So we'll move to Mr. and Mrs. Terry.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just need to clarify something. So, oh, my wife's putting the camera on. So the reason that there is a 4:30 nightclub license on that property is because the whole of the property used to be a nightclub. So and what happened is the freeholder took that nightclub and turned the majority of that nightclub into flats. Completed in about 2018 when Mr. Yelling and myself and my wife bought property in that flat. As part of the discussions that we had with the landlord, we sought clarification, which is actually rectified, which is actually stated in the lease that we wouldn't have a nightclub in the base garden, and that when in the basement, and that when any new licensee, as in Adam, took on that the clauses. I should just remind myself. The clauses.
Sorry, Mr. Terry. Can I just interrupt you there?
Yeah.
The agreement you have between yourself and the freeholder, that is not a licensing issue.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to give you the background.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm perfectly happy that it's not a licensing issue, but essentially, although Councillor Fry earlier asked the question, are we aware that that was a nightclub area? Yes, we were, but we sought clarification on the property to make sure that we weren't going to be impacted in the immediate vicinity. So yes, but we caveated that because essentially the owner of the freehold, who is a relation of the applicant, sold those properties on condition that there wasn't going to be loud music and essentially after hours in there. So yes, we were aware, and we're not. I see Les has got his hand up. Sorry, Les, Councillor Fry. Have you got a question?
Yeah. So, Mr. Terry, how long have you lived in the property for?
So we bought them at the same time, so 3 years when they were habitable.
So you moved in knowing that you were moving into a community impact zone area.
I didn't understand as I alluded to earlier, I didn't know what the community impact zone was, and I haven't read up on it. So we only got that detail yesterday. But as part of the searches and things we did, we went through with our solicitor when we bought the property, and we recognised the chance. I mean, we've got a fish shop, we've got a cafe. I haven't, and that's what I say. Had this been a caveated application that said light music that doesn't affect the flat above, had it been said as a coffee shop, but what the actual license is music, alcohol, and we'll call it a coffee shop, but it isn't really a coffee shop. It could be that way. Had the applicant spoken to us and said this is what we want, yeah, and they put those clauses on their application, then our objections would have been a lot less.
This is something that we are very conscious. The council has a role to play and has to monitor GDPR and so on, all those data protection issues. They have to be very careful in how they deal with them. And anybody listening to this meeting, we hope they will take those sorts of issues away and communicate with people that are going to be relevant to any application in the future. So I hope you're reassured. And would you be willing to take part in any communication with the applicant?
I'm happy to talk to the applicant. I would rather that was done before the license is granted, so that there is some onus on the applicant to agree to what.
Can I reassure you there? The one thing I do like with licensing is that there is the opportunity for a license review. If a premises steps out of line for whatever reason, and I mean seriously out of line, then the license can be reviewed, and the applicant solicitor will be very, very much aware of that fact, and that's what helps us as councillors and people in Dorset have regulated licensing in premises, because they want to follow the guidelines. Otherwise, their licence is at risk.
Okay, I think my concern is the extent of the hours and the vagueness of the music and alcohol definition in this license application.
I think the communication that has gone, the consultation between all the parties has been with that in mind, to consider and be respectful to nearby residents and the community, and the fact that they're in the community impact zone. I think we're all pleased that the communication and consultation has taken place. So thank you, Chair. I don't have any more questions at the moment.
Okay.
Right.
So from my point of view, I think the client has already stated that he was happy to have non-amplified music, which would be better for us, and also that it's preliminarily a coffee house and not a bar and not an alcoholic, and that goes to alleviate some of my major risk, which is effectively drunk people congregating outside, whether they're having a smoke or not, and having loud conversations under what is our bedroom.
Thank you.
Okay. So I take the point about the lease. I won't go into the detail, but there is a key clause in the lease that we're discussing, which says it mustn't be a nightclub and it mustn't cause nuisance to the people above. Right, and I think that's a reasonable thing for any leasee to have on it.
Chair, I think we just need to make it, we're not looking at a nightclub here. We're looking at a premises license here, not a nightclub as such.
Right.
Thank you very much. So is that it, Mr.
No,
Terry?
no, I just wanted to go through a number of points. Now, some of those, I will go through them. Yeah.
Your connection's very bad, Mr. Terry. Can't hear it. If you're saying anything now, we can't hear you.
Oh, is it my connection? Just a second.
It has been very flaky all the way through, to be perfectly honest with you.
Mr. Chair, perhaps you'd like to suggest they turn the camera off if they need to speak. It might help the signal.
Yeah, if you turn your camera off.
My camera's off. Is that any better?
Yes, at the moment, yes.
Okay. So I think from my point of view, I put the residential flat, which effectively is 3 feet above the exterior of the venue, and smoking and loitering in this area will affect sleep and quality of life above. Yeah, this is a family property, and the health of our children will suffer. So we'll suffer through noise and second-hand smoke. I take the points that were made earlier. My view is, I think outside seating has been asked to stop at 10 o'clock. I would request this was moved to 9 o'clock. And some effort must be made to move that any smoking away from the windows, recognising that people, if they're outside smoking and it's raining, the footfall will be more likely to just be directly underneath our windows. Well, the next point was that I think music in our flats is unacceptable and must stop at a more reasonable time, or be caveated in some ways, because essentially it's going to stop us being able to use the flat to sleep in if that noise is excessive. I know there's a noise management plan in there, but I'd like something in place that says noise, why we need music, and that after let's say 11 o'clock at night, I'm struggling to understand for a coffee shop. Yeah. The venue title is caffeine, which implies it's a coffee shop, but the application implies it's an alcohol and music licenses with a very open description on those. I would like that definition tightened to make that more representative. I think recognising, I must say that I think Weymouth is getting better, and I welcome the opportunity to make it better. My view was that indoor family cafes are not as prevalent as they used to be, and losing one would be a bit of a problem. But another music straight night late type venue is more suited to somewhere away from residential buildings. That's my view. It doesn't need to be there. It could be somewhere else. Let's move it somewhere else where it isn't an impact to the local residents. One I thought of, and as I say, I only got all the information from the applicant over the last day and a bit. The requirement to keep all the walls, doors and windows shut that's in the application means they must need new ventilation in that area. And I would want any additional ventilation installed so that wasn't audible to any of the flats. I have mentioned that the freeholder and the tenant are related, but when we spoke to the freeholder, he said he didn't see the need to advise us of this application. As I say, we found out in the press, and I think that was very poor on their part. So we have spoken to him. He's got our number. We rang him back and said, what's going on? It goes back to what I say. I think for me, What I'm worried about is that the flat will be. I accept it is noisy. We had, my son was woken up at 2 o'clock by somebody having an argument on the seafront. That's life. The problem is that if you've got a venue that is open that late underneath, that would be a constant occurrence rather than a rare occurrence. And as a constant occurrence, it will be untenable for that to remain as a bedroom. I think that's my main point. I know I've gone through them rather quickly. But yeah.
So now you've added those points. I think Councillor Fry wants to ask a question. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thank you. How old's your son, Mr.
9.
Sorry, he's 9. Okay, thank you. Noted. You are aware that this is a premises license. It is for a bistro selling alcohol in place. It is not going to be a coffee shop. I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, because you keep mentioning the coffee shop and that, and we're here looking at a premises license for the sale of alcohol and music.
Okay, and I think that's probably one of my points. It's called caffeine, which implies it's a coffee shop.
No, it doesn't. It's just a name that they probably found for whatever reason. There's probably a sensible reason why they've chosen that name. It's but like other premises, they don't always portray what they do on the tin.
Okay, no, accepted. But again, I think for me, it's the late license and the music without any caveats on it that's the problem.
Thank you. Right, so now I'll ask the applicants if they got any questions for the objectors on what they presented.
Just one, if I may. It's a requirement with regard to any licensing application that a site notice is posted on the premises for a period of 28 days, starting with the day after the application was submitted. I'm advised and satisfied that that requirement was complied with. Did you not see the site notice?
Sorry, I don't need the camera. Yeah, it's worth noting that it was on the front of Mary's Tea Shop, but honestly, I don't make a habit of going and looking in Mary's Tea Shop to see if there's any notices.
If I may add something, if you don't mind. Sorry, just that it is our first time communicating with you directly. I'm on the understanding that it's a secondary property yourself, so a holiday let. So
it is at the moment.
It is at the moment. It's secondary property, but we were down there on Saturday, Sunday this week. So I mean, we'll be down there a lot of the time, and other people do use it with younger children and older children, and actually it brings benefit to the community, because honestly we do rent it out sometimes, and other people will be impacted and impacted for that reason. But we have stayed there. We stay there a fair bit.
Sure. So with all due respect, I think that there's also a contribution that we make to the local economy and to local people living in the area to provide an experience, to provide something different to them that we see will be of benefit. So it's so we contribute in the same way as yourselves. The property you've got there is on the seafront, the estimated Weymouth, which is probably the largest hive of activity in Weymouth. And appreciate when it's quiet, then that's a benefit. But if it was myself personally, I would be aware that it's a very lively area in general. There's music played from the beach that's amplified throughout the summer. There's fireworks, there's lots of things. And I think if you could just bear with the fact that there is noise in that area. We're coming here today to say that we want to make it as good as possible for you.
Yeah, and I think really if we sat down and it wasn't a renewal of trying to get as much as possible out of the license extension and the hours that you're running, I wouldn't necessarily be in this position. The issue is that the first we heard of it, it was a 4:30. Music means music can be amplified or not. There's no caveats on it, and essentially, if the application takes into account and reduces my concerns, I wish you the best of luck. I haven't got any problem with supporting local business in Weymouth. I want to make Weymouth better. My question is, do we need a late night opening venue that concentrates on alcohol? You say that isn't what you're doing. I don't disbelieve you, but the key is that the license reflects something different, and I want to make sure that that's correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Yelling or Mr. Terry or Mrs. Terry? Mr. Terry?
Mr. Terry, where do you actually reside? What town?
Where I reside is I'm just north of the border in Somerset, but I work in a place called Templeton. So essentially, I travel. We either stay in Weymouth or we'll stay in or we stay here. We can work at both places. Obviously, when my son's at school, we have to be here.
So yeah, okay, all noted. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Do any of the licensing team want to ask any questions of the objectors?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Jane, do you need to ask anything from Environment and Health?
No, thank you. I'll wait for my summary. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. So we've gone through everybody now that is objected. So I think it's time to sum up. So without trying to repeat too much of what you already said, like I said, I'll go backwards through it. So Mr. Terry, would you like to say sum up in any way?
I think for myself, I recognise all the points, and some of the points that have been made have been fairly good. As I said, I think the view from myself is that the licence is too open for myself. It is too open in terms of late night opening and music without the clarification on it, and I'd like some additional clauses on there, particularly about the noise impact on our flat for myself and my son. And one of the questions I would ask is, would it be sensible to move the area for ingress and egress out to the back after 10 o'clock?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Yelling, would you like to say anything in summing up?
No, I think Mr. Terry's made most of my points. I think it would be good to have more communication. I think what we're hearing from Adam and what it says on the licence are two different things, and that's where the concern is. I totally trust Adam to do what he's saying, but that might change in the future. They may get new partners who want to do something different or whatever. So I think as we stand at the moment, the bistro type setup is very different to what it says on the licence.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Yelling. This is
Mr. Yelling,
sorry,
Chair. Mr. Yelling, where is this your home, or is this do you live elsewhere?
It's a holiday let business, but we do stay there quite a bit. But I also have a house, partly live in Cornwall.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move to responsible authorities. Jane, would you like to sum up in any way?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I would, please. Just wanted to make a few points of clarity. The noise management plan, which is one of the conditions that's been agreed between ourselves and the applicant, and for yourselves to follow through if you feel is appropriate. Once it's been agreed by the licensing authority, does form part of the licence, and so that's one important point I wanted to make. The Live Music Act enables premises to have musicians, regulated entertainment up to 2,300 hours without conditions. So if there was any change such that regulated entertainment only happened up until 2,300 hours under the Live Music Act, they would not require any conditions on them, and as such may themselves then cause disturbance to the two holiday lets that we've now found. The area is a mixed residential and commercial area. There are lots of premises in the immediate area which have licences, some of which run to a lot later than what is proposed. Some of that is historical, some of that has been agreed through reviews of licences, etc. And my last point I wanted to make was that if if air conditioning was required additionally to what is currently on site, the applicants would need to go for planning permission, and for the objectors, environmental health are actually consulted in that process to ensure that that doesn't have additional impact on the residential in the area. I realise that's a few points that were perhaps new to the conversation, but that's additional to what I originally said, but I think would help you as councillors make your own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. I appreciate that. We'll now move to the applicants. Applicant, would you like to sum up, please?
Yes, I will, and I'll try and do it very briefly. Firstly, thank you, Ms. Williams, for mentioning the ventilation or extract, because that was on my list of bullet points. It needs planning, and of course, when planning applications are granted for such systems, they're almost inevitably subject to a host of conditions about vibration, noise levels, and the exact positioning of any flues and extracts and so on and so forth. One little point of clarification, if I may, with regards to the Live Music Act. Yes, at the outset, it gives any on-licensed premises the right to have live and recorded music up until 11 o'clock at night without conditions, but that is subject to a proviso that if problems are caused, then an application can be brought again to review the licence to disapply the Live Music Act, and then to put a host of conditions on, or even to simply prevent any music from taking place. And I think that is something that weighs heavily in this case. This business about the ability to call for a review at any time. The Licensing Act is permissive, subject to cumulative impact policies, as you all know. The starting point normally is you grant what's requested unless there's good reason not to, unless it's appropriate to do otherwise, etc. But we've heard the word need an awful lot over the last few minutes. Again, as I'm sure you're aware, the question of need is not relevant in terms of the licensing objectives. It's not something that you ought to properly consider. And then finally this, we can't turn the clock back. Time goes on and on. I entirely understand why it was that the original application was submitted in the way in which it was. I have to say that had I been involved in this at the very outset, I would probably have done things a little differently, bearing in mind that, yes, you now face the situation where you're applying for a new licence in the cumulative impact area, despite the fact that there was a licence there before. And I would certainly have attempted to engage in an informal consultation with relevant responsible authorities before submitting the application, unless there was a very good reason not to, such as, for example, being time constrained, that there was an urgency about it, that I didn't have time to do it. Had that happened, then it's almost a certainty that the application that would have gone in would not have been for a 4:30 licence. It would have been for the hours that are now agreed, or something very similar, and subject to a great many more conditions. It is frequently the case that people say, you know, well, we should be consulted before these applications are made, and so on and so forth. The entire object of the exercise is that there is this 28-day consultation period. There has to be a notice on the premises. There has to be a notice in the local newspaper. Your council, your officers will put it on their website. Now, I appreciate that not everybody is a sad individual like me that goes around reading any bit of green, blue or white paper that appears on a lamppost or in a shop window and scrutinises the public notice section of the local paper every week. But there it is. And I simply observe that, having been made aware that an application had been submitted and being entitled to see a copy, and they clearly did have a copy, otherwise they wouldn't have known it was a 4:30 application. It does work both ways, that it is always possible for somebody who's concerned about it to go to the council, to go to the applicant and say, look, I want to talk about this and I want to talk direct rather than just put in an email. Okay, that didn't happen. It's not particularly relevant here. We are where we are. I would hope that you, Chair, and your colleagues have been reassured by what you've heard today, And I think it's particularly helpful to hear from the applicants themselves, because you will no doubt have formed an impression as to what they have in mind, how genuine and sincere they are. And I am grateful again to Ms. Williams for having made the observation that they cooperated fully. Say cooperated, that sounds as if it's a police inquiry. They worked with environmental health and the police. They met with them to go through their plans, to explain it, and to reach very largely an agreement, subject to a couple of sticking points that I was able to resolve when I came into the matter less than a week ago. So I do invite you, please, to grant this application, subject to the changes in hours and all of the additional conditions that have been agreed with the responsible authorities. On behalf of my clients, I would say to not just those who have turned up today, but anybody else who either lives or has a business interest in the locality, that they are more than welcome to contact, talk to Adam and to Nick at any time with regard to any concerns. And of course, they always have the nuclear option of seeking a review at any time if they are concerned about any aspect of the operation of the premises. If I say anything else, I'll be repeating myself and taking up your time unnecessarily. So thank you very much, sir, and your colleagues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Day. Appreciate that. So now, summing up, licensing, do you want to say anything?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you. I have a few points to make. But at the very beginning of this, it was talked about the door staff and having how many were on with the condition that was agreed. Can I just make a point that that condition regarding the door staff and the number of door staff was agreed by the Dorset Police, and as a consequence, partly is why they withdrew their objection to the application. So you just need to bear that in mind, because that's what the police bore that on. Live music act's already been mentioned. I was going to talk about that. The smoking area is being talked about, and the seating area. The sitting out area is not down to licensing, that is actually down to highways. So whether they'll get a sitting out area or not would be a highways matter. We don't deal with that part side of things. Also, I can confirm that site notice was up in the window, because having gone past the premises a few times on other duties in Weymouth, I saw it. And it's also about how the application is a coffee shop or whatever. Nightclubs are not defined in law anymore. It's a license for whatever hours you want. And also, like you say, about the coffee shop. So it's a license for alcohol and entertainment. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Appreciate that. So we've reached the end now. I'll just go to legal. Lara, have I done everything I should have as chairman?
Yes, Chairman, I think you've covered everything.
Okay, so now we will leave this meeting and go to an exempt business, because it's not a public matter now, and discuss our decision, what decision we come to. So thank you everybody.
Chair, would you like me to propose we go to exempt business? Yes,
I will in a sec. Before you do that, I'd just like to thank everybody for their attendance this morning. It's been very useful discussions and points brought by every party. So thank you very much for that. And over to you, Councillor Fry.
I'll propose we go to exempt business, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Andrews, can I just make sure that you're going to remind parties of their right of appeal?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. All right. Yes. So every party has a right to appeal the decision that is made through a Weymouth magistrates within 21 days of the notice being issued to that relevant party. Have I got that right, Lara?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And the notice will be sent out within 5 working days.
The notice will be sent out, yeah, within 5 days. Okay. So Councillor Fry's proposed. Councillor Leonard seconded. So we'll go to exempt business. So I'll see you in the other meeting we set up. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.